There's nothing better than getting into a flow state when building a new game. The pieces are coming together, you know exactly what you want to add next, and then you get pulled out of it because you forgot to set something basic at the start. I spent a decade programming software for the aerospace industry, and now I make games. I don't claim to know everything, but I do know how hard it is to get that momentum back after having to fix something that should have been done earlier. In the last video, we put the main structure of the project in place, giving us a foundation for this vertical slice. But before we start programming the gameplay, there are still a handful of setup details worth taking care of. None of which are especially complicated, but it's a good idea to handle these now to avoid having to bring what we're doing to a halt later. To start off, there's a common UI gotcha that's worth fixing now. As we left them, the full screen control nodes we added as UI routes were left in their default settings. And by default, each one is set to consume mouse input before it reaches the controls below it. And on top of that, the instance debug text overlay has child nodes inside of it that do the same thing. It's not a problem yet, but it could have become very confusing once we started adding menus. We would essentially have 3 invisible layers blocking mouse events from reaching anything below them. For each of these control nodes, we're going to set mouse, filter, ignore. And on the debug text overlay, set behavior recursive to disabled. This will allow mouse events to pass through to the actual menu controls. In the future, we may update this as we implement these systems, but for now, we won't have to worry about the UI getting blocked. If you're interested in seeing the source for this project, there's a GitHub link in the description below. And with that taken care of, let's get our project settings squared away. First, make sure Advanced Settings is enabled so everything we need is visible. Next, go to Display, Window. We want to set the viewport width and height to the base resolution for the game. For this project, we're using 640 by 360. I covered the resolution scalings more extensively in a previous video. The quick explanation is that 640 by 360 scales cleanly into common modern display resolutions. If we leave the window settings alone, the game launches at a tiny base size. During development, I set the window width and height overrides to 2000 by 1200. This gives me a comfortable testing window while still displaying the game at a clean 1920 by 1080 scale. It is important to remember that this override is just for convenient development and should definitely be revisited before release. If we end up releasing a game that opens larger than some users' monitors, we're gonna have a bad time. Continuing on to stretch settings, I've covered these before so I'll be brief, but every video is someone's first, and the difference is much easier to understand once you see it. Set mode to canvas items, aspect to keep, scale mode to integer. Integer scaling prevents uneven pixel sizes. I'm using canvas items because this project combines pixel art with modern effects and a smooth camera. For a stricter retro presentation, Viewport is also a valid choice. With Viewport, Godot renders a scene at a smaller internal resolution and then scales the result up. With canvas items, Godot still uses the base resolution for layout and scaling, but draws the 2D scene directly at the final size. Next, we'll label the physics layers under Layer Names, 2D Physics. We'll start with the layers we already know we need, such as world, player, enemy, and interactable. Now, instead of memorizing layer numbers, we can immediately see that the player is on the player level and checks for collisions against the world. We can do the same under Layer Names, 2D Render. These labels will be useful when we start controlling which objects are affected by different lights. Now this next one can really take you out of the moment when you start working on your player, stopping to add input mappings one at a time. So we're going to go to the Input Map tab and add the basic actions we expect to use. And it's important to name each action after what it does, not the physical button. If instead of putting in something like button A, we want to use a name like Interact. And we'll add the most appropriate actions for the game, so movement, pause, jump, shoot, interact. One thing I like to do is to add a sprint action, even when it's not part of the final design, because it helps when moving around during development. Now, if we're using a controller, we want to make sure to map each action to both the keyboard and the controller inputs. I also add one more called Debug Quit, and I map it to the escape key. Then I handle the input with this code. Calling quit directly closes the application, but propagating the close notification first gives nodes an opportunity to respond before the game exits. And this is something that can grow with the project. For example, in my previous game, I used a shortcut to return to my main menu first, so I could verify that the level was unloading cleanly before quitting. Another important thing to do early on is to define a script layout. This makes your scripts much easier to look through because everything is generally in the same order. I keep a file that defines the full layout, This is based on the Godot recommendation, but the most important part is having something defined and sticking to it. You can still order things the way that makes sense for you and your project. I also made a sticky note in Windows with the basics so I can keep it on my second monitor, instead of having to open up a file every time I forget whether enum comes before const. Next up, we want to create a place to put debug information from the start. And we don't want anything fancy, just a label with the FPS and the game version is enough to begin with. You can set the version in the project settings under Application, Config, Version. I recommend using a major.minor.patch version scheme, so we're starting here with 0.1.0. You can access that value from your script using the code shown here. Then we can print it when the game starts and display it in the debug overlay. And this just gives us a simple place to add more information as the project grows. And there's a good chance that's going to be one of the first things that we work on. Now, the next one isn't something that would stop us in our tracks, but it's still nice to add a bit of visual identity to our project. So now's as good a time as any to add the project's default icon. To do so, we'll import the image we want to use and set Application, Config, Icon, choosing the path containing the desired icon. This gives the project a recognizable icon in the project manager and provides a default icon for an exported game. We can also replace the default boot splash image by importing a banner and then setting its path in Application, Boot Splash, Image. And if you really want everyone to savor your beautiful art, you can set a minimum display time so that they will have to stare at it. But of course, the real reason is because we optimized it so well that it wouldn't show up otherwise. And with that important step taken care of, we're ready to start developing our game without worrying about those tiny setting details slowing us down. Since this is also a good foundation for future projects, it'd be really nice if we could always start from this baseline. So let's set that up real quick. The simplest option is to create a zip of the project and use that as a starting template going forward. If you're using Git, you can also create a tag or separate template repository that you can copy whenever you start a new project. But another, more flexible option would be to create an EditorScript that we could run at the start of any new project. This script can be copied into a fresh project, run from the editor, and it will automatically apply the project settings we just went through. Even better, we can also make small changes to the local copy if the future project needs slightly different settings. This script doesn't have to stay inside the project forever since its purpose is set up. But I like to keep it around as a reference, and as an easy way to reapply the same baseline if ever needed. But of course, if you're using Git, you'll most likely have a clean commit to return to. And if you're not there yet, I have a Git with Godot tutorial if you'd like to learn more. Currently, this script only handles project settings, but we could expand it later to create the folder structure or even create the main game scene. And with that, the project is in a much better place to build on. The setup work is not always the most exciting part, but it gives us a cleaner foundation for wherever the series goes next. From the comments so far, there seems to be a pretty even split on whether we should make this a top-down action RPG or a more traditional turn-based game. I think either direction could be great. Each offers a chance to learn different but interesting parts of game development. An action RPG would let us cover hitboxes, hurtboxes, attack timing, weapon resources, enemy reactions, friendly AI, and maybe even co-op. A turn-based RPG would lean more into major game systems like moving between the overworld and battles, returning to the right location afterwards, managing stats, spells, enemy turns, and designing the flow of combat. So let me know in the comments what you'd like to see, or if you think there's a fun way to combine the two. And on that note, I still cannot believe that we just passed 10,000 subscribers. I'm still kind of new to this. Does that mean I have to do a karaoke stream? Oh, on second thought, let's maybe save that for another milestone. But seriously, your support has been incredible, and I genuinely appreciate every one of you who has watched, commented, shared a video, or joined the community on Discord. You can find a link in the description if you'd like to join us. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe. And a huge thank you to our recent members. If you're interested, you can click join below to see the membership options. Members get early access to videos along with members-only posts and polls, and your support directly helps the channel continue to grow. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.